listening to The Way It Is. Headlines tonight.
Troughs and breezes spread diseases.
Straws crime blitz scores no hits.
Coughs and sneezes, Britain freezes.
Robbie wins Brits, gets on my
Richard.
nerves. With all attention focused on the farmers this week, teachers must have been feeling left out because they've been banging on again about how hard done by they are, having to work all of 5 days a week from 9 till 3 and only getting a measly 13 weeks holiday a year. Apparently, this constitutes overworked. With me is spokeswoman from the NUT, Emma Billingsley.
Good evening, Mr. Richard.
So, Miss Billingsley, what's all this about a strike?
No, that won't do.
What?
That won't do at all. When I say good evening, Mr. Richard, you must reply, good evening, Miss Billingsley.
For heavens. Good evening, Miss Billingsley.
That didn't hurt, did it? Manners cost nothing now. What did you want to know?
I want to know about your impending strike action. Apparently there are thousands of unfilled posts and you're having to do almost a proper day's work to cover them all.
And now, before we begin, I must say that I'm just a supply spokeswoman, so today we'll just be reading quietly.
No, I'm sorry, we need to do an interview.
Very well. Where did you get up to with your normal spokeswoman?
We haven't had, there wasn't...
Are you chewing?
No, look. Getting back to the point, Miss Billingsley, do you really think strike action is the best way forward?
Well, if you sit quietly and cross your legs, I'll tell you. You have to realise, Richard, there are 3,000 unfilled posts across the country and we are struggling to cover the gaps.
Oh dear, having to stay late, are you past home time?
Right, I've had enough of your cheek. This is a serious crisis. Why are you making light of this?
Don't know, Miss Billingsley.
Well, I suggest you go and stand outside Greg Dyke's office and think long and hard about it.
Sorry, Miss Billingsley. Crime news, and Tony Blair this week outlined new plans to tackle the problem of persistent reoffenders.
Joining us is overworked government spokesman Faden Boyce. So, Mr. Boyce, how exactly do you intend to do this?
We're going to put them all on a big pyre and set fire to them to stop it spreading.
Isn't that foot and mouth?
Oh, God, yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I've just got so much on at the moment. Every day is a different crisis. Young offenders. What we're going to do with them is we're going to reduce their prison sentences, but increase the time they spend on probation.
And what happens when they're on probation?
We're going to talk to them.
Just talk to them?
Yes.
Isn't that a bit soft?
No, because we're going to talk to them very sternly indeed. We're going to talk to them like this. Don't you lot reoffend, please. See, the new Labour are committed to cutting crime rates, reducing the prison population and just making things nice.
Nice? Isn't everybody committed to nice?
Oh, no. Not the Conservatives. They want to make things, you know what.
Not nice?
Exactly, yes.
And what if young offenders do reoffend?
Oh, then we put them on a fire and burn them.
Thank you, Mr. Boyce. With news on the blight that is foot and mouth disease, our correspondent Peter Sukes is actually coming live from a farm.
Yes, Richard. First it was a silence of the lambs. Now that's been joined by the quietness of the pigs and the eerie hush of the cattle as the agricultural community is rocked back on its heels yet again.
Does the particular farm you're reporting from have foot and mouth disease, Peter?
Not as such, Richard, although I have just passed several signs saying keep out, keep away and pick your own strawberries.
Have you experienced the trauma of foot and mouth firsthand?
On Monday I was in Oakhampton and shortly afterwards the first case in Devon was diagnosed there. And at the weekend my visit to Essex coincided almost spookily with the outbreak at Canodon Farm.
I see. Peter, did you not also visit Headon on the Wall farm in Northumberland last week?
Strangely, yes, Richard. It's been a week of scoops for me.
Are you perhaps not beginning to notice a trend here, Peter?
Oh, my God, yes. Yes, it's me, isn't it? It's my fault. Oh, I'm so sorry, everyone. Oh, my...
You know where the dip is, Peter.
Yes.
The continuing foot and mouth crisis and the resulting restrictions on public travel could mean that a spring election is now out of the question. Here to report on this and other election news is our election correspondent, Steve Limp. I'm sorry? Are you pretending to be a pirate?
No, Richard. I was ah-ha-ha-ing in a victorious manner. My caution about the election date has been vindicated. For the last 2 weeks, you've been telling me that the
Election would be on May the 3rd.
Yes, while I've been telling you that we should wait for the announcements.
All right, Lip, you've made your point. So when do you think it will be?
I don't like unnecessary speculation, Richard. It raises my stress levels. As you well know, I have a spastic rectum, and I need to keep my emotions in check.
If I may put your rectum to one side for a moment, what other election issues are in the news?
Well, this week the Lib Dems announced their alternative budget.
More nurses.
Well, no.
Free dental checkup.
Listen, I'm doing it!
Tax increases.
Oh, shut up, will you?
Not a chance in hell of ever gaining power.
I was going to say that. Oh, I'm spasming.
Thanks, Limp. You know, if the election isn't now going to be on May the 3rd, we might not be needing you as a regular correspondent anymore.
Don't you make me poo!
I really think we should wait for the announcement.
Those are my words!
All this idle speculation is getting us nowhere.
Ah! You bastard! I warned you this would happen!
Do you need to leave the studio rather quickly, Limp?
Yes, I do now.
Any further thoughts on standing as a candidate in the next election, Richard?
Well, it's funny you should mention that, Lolly. After you raised the subject last week, I received a number of anonymous letters saying that I should stand as an independent candidate.
Really?
Yes, well, I'm quite touched, actually. Although, if I did stand, I would have to give up my job here at the BBC.
Would you? Oh, that thought hadn't occurred to me.
You'd lose me as your news partner.
Well, sometimes a girl has to make a sacrifice for the greater good of mankind.
That's very altruistic of you.
What, you mean like Dustin Hoffman in Rain Man?
No. Tony Blair and George W. Bush cemented their special relationship over the weekend. On the line from Camp David is Dee Dee Handringer, our special relationship affairs correspondent. Dee Dee, can you tell us more about what actually went on inside Camp David? How did the two men get on?
Well, I think Anthony went away happy, and that is the most important thing. He's such a nice fellow. It's such a shame. But at least his last days on Earth have been made a bit more special.
What are you going on about?
I'm talking about Tony getting his wish, you know, his family flying him all the way to meet the real president of the US of A. That cheeky grin as George handed in the jacket and getting a ride on the presidential helicopter. Well, shucks, it's better than taking the poor little fella to Disneyland, I reckon.
Dee Dee, Anthony isn't a sick person having their last wish granted. He's Tony Blair. He's our Prime Minister.
No way, I met his carer.
That was Cherie, his wife. Anthony is our Prime Minister.
You're pulling my dinger. Him? Geez, well, that's a great surprise. I just thought, you know, the way he was hanging about looking like he couldn't believe he was there, and as far as I could see, he wasn't used to dressing himself. I thought he was just another of your competition winners.
Competition winners?
Yeah, like when George Bush Sr. was real kind to that slow-looking British fellow with the gray hair, gave him a real baseball bat.
Are you talking about John Major?
Yeah, John, that was his name. Real soft-spoken, but not all there, if you get my drift. So you're telling me Anthony really was the Prime Minister of England?
Yes.
Jeez. Do you think George knew?
I doubt it. Goodbye, Dee Dee.
It's been a pleasure, Jeremy.
Jeremy?
Most people think of folk music as being the sole reserve of fat men with beards, B.O. and badly fitting Aran sweaters.
But this is not the case, it says here. No! Folk music is a viable living art form, and joining us tonight is the contemporary folk troupe Urban Tractor, who interpret modern issues in the folk idiom.
That's right, Richard. We want to dispel the outdated image of folk music.
So what's the subject tonight, gentlemen? The relief of Mafeking?
Oh, no, Richard. Michael Landy, the artist who systematically put all 7,006 items he owned on conveyor belts and then ground them to dust in an abandoned shop in Oxford Street, Cressida.
In this song, we examine whether this can be seen as a textual analysis of consumerism or covert self-revelation. Sean.
Thank you. Now, this song is in D. Feel free to join in on the chorus. Michael Landy, Michael Landy, where is your great art? All along out, along down the lonely, and what's this on your conveyor belt? Apple Mac,
Electric shaver.
CD player,
Savile Row jacket.
Calvin Klein pants,
Mosquito killer.
miniature golf set,
Widescreen TV.
cuddly toy,
Family photos.
nipple clampers,
Drawings of dead grandmother.
kids singing lobster.
More nipple clampers.
Enough!
A bunch of old cobblers and all. A bunch of old cobblers and all.
Yes, very good. Nice beard.
Thank you very much.
A human brain trapped in a rodent's body. No, not Peter Stringfellow. I am, of course, talking about the scientists who have produced a number of mice in which a quarter of brain cells are human.
The plan is to use the creatures to find cures for human diseases. With us in the studio to talk about the ethical consequences of such an experiment is Dr. Herman Scholl.
Hello.
Doctor, isn't this just another example of scientists with a God complex tinkering with the natural world?
Well, we are playing God a bit, but with a scientific purpose.
But what scientific purpose can be served by grafting a human brain into a rodent?
Well, we find out if it's possible to graft a human brain into a rodent.
But what about the pain and distress caused to these poor animals who have a right to life just as we do?
What about it?
It's unethical.
They don't feel the pain like we do. It benefits the community. Health for the third world. A cure for cancer.
Oh, have you found a cure for cancer?
No. But I have attached a parrot's wings to a hamster.
Why?
Because it's fun, all right? I love it. Don't tell me you haven't burnt an ant with a magnifying glass on a hot day. Did you know I had the world's first flying hamster?
Had? What happened to it?
It flew into a ceiling fan and died.
Ugh. Thank you, Doctor.
Once, the only criteria for working as a security guard was a criminal record and a love of porn. But now, one might add a passing interest in vigilantism to that list.
Yes, Jack Straw is asking security guards to take part in new patrols designed to keep crime off the streets.
And yet, in the same week, the BBC are sacking dozens of their security guards after they failed basic intelligence tests.
The aptitude tests, which included such questions as, what is 10% of 100, were barely difficult enough to challenge a 7-year-old. And yet guards working in BBC premises all over London still failed.
Joining us in the studio is Gary Longton, spokesman for the National Association of Security Firms. Mr. Longton. Mr. Longton?
He's not here, Richard.
Well, where is he? Hello? Mr. Longton, where are you? Where? Well, have you tried turning the handle? The handle, the sticky out thing on the door. No, the wooden thing in front of you. No, that's a window. Oh, this is ridiculous. Why is there never a policeman around when you want to interview one?
Those clever scientists have discovered the best way to crack an egg.
Still no luck on the cancer thing, but we'll keep you posted. First, there was pop stars. Now there's talk of a similar version called soap stars. This tawdry spectacle of desperate wannabe battery farming has gone on long enough. But that hasn't stopped us continuing with our own version, New Stars.
Yes, Richard is one of the judges, and we're trying to find our very own Hugh Edwards of the future. Here's this week's instalment.
Week 2 of New Stars, although for some reason it seems much, much longer. The initial 5 applicants have been whittled down to 3. During discussions, one of the judges, dubbed Rotten Richard, has been causing controversy with some of his decisions.
Yes, all I'm saying is that I'm not having the news read by a single mother who looks like she'd be more at home going through the freezer bins in Iceland while her kids hang on to her leggings, all right?
Adam is another judge.
Honestly, Richard, you don't like anyone. You've rejected all of them. We've got to pick one.
Well, what about that second girl? She was a bit overweight, but she could deliver a story.
It was Peter Sissons. He's not an applicant. He just popped in.
Really? Well, he's let himself go. I didn't recognise him.
With Rotten Richard increasingly alienating himself from everything and everyone, it's clear the decision process is not going to be easy.
And I refuse to entertain the idea of anyone Welsh.
No one from Wales is in the running.
I know. Just telling you one of my general life rules.
Next week on News Stars, can they choose a winner? Will Adam take over as chief judge? And will Richard get punched out by Peter Sissons when he bumps into him in a BBC corridor? Find out on next week's News Stars.
The American professor who wrote an authorized biography of Field Marshal Montgomery in the 1980s is about to publish a new unauthorized work, The Full Monty, which alleges that the war hero was a secret gay.
A genuine revelation or just another cheap bit of scandal mongering to sell books? On the line now is Colonel Freddie Bruff, who as a young officer served with Montgomery in Africa. Colonel, was Monty a secret gay?
No, absolutely not. Nothing secret about it. Everyone knew he was bent to the bayonet. Always asking one of the lads to polish his rifle for him.
Did any of them oblige?
Well, me, for a start. But, you know, none of the desert rats were opposed to a game of Monty's leapfrog, where the winner would often be given the privilege of waxing the field marshal's moustache.
So when exactly did you first find out that Montgomery was gay?
When he took me up the ammunition dump on my first day.
And he told you there, did he?
I'm sorry, no, you misunderstand me, Richard. That was a euphemism for buggery.
Thank you, Colonel. Now, in tribute to some half-baked idea a newspaper had about a month ago, the Wages has instituted a job swap program between some of its reporters.
In a moment, arts correspondent Tom Commode will be reviewing the Middle East peace process. But first, foreign correspondent James Gravelax has been to see Hannibal.
Hannibal is a film of many parts, Lolly. Most of them body parts, seen outside of their usual context, namely the body. Shot on location in Florence, the mist encircling this ancient city like some half-forgotten dream, perhaps of a heavier, thicker fog. Hannibal has moments of rare beauty. These contrast with the other bits, when he eats people, which I have to say are not my cup of tea at all. Hannibal's greatest achievement, meanwhile, the bit with the mountaineering elephants, was left almost entirely on what is known, I believe, as the hairdresser's floor. That is a shame, and in the end, I have to say, I prefer the old version with Oliver Reed.
Thank you, James. Arts correspondent Tom Commode is on the other line from Jerusalem. Tom, your thoughts on the Middle East peace process?
Peace is right, Richard. For this production does have a piecemeal quality about it. An absurdist quality very reminiscent of Ionescu. Die Hard 2, Die Harder, or even EastEnders at its most recherché.
Yes, quite. What about the personalities involved?
Like all the young male inhabitants of some grim Essex hellhole, Richard, the Israelis have gone with Sharon. Changing the faces on the posters can't disguise the fact that this is essentially the same monotonous farce we've all seen 100 times before. I'm reminded of Art Blue Peter, the English cricket team.
Sorry to interrupt you, Tom, but surely you realise this is not a West End theatre, but a theatre of war. These are real people. This is a real ongoing conflict they're trying to resolve.
Real?
Yes.
What, a real conflict here in the Middle East?
Yes.
Christ! Right, let's see, scenes of extraordinary power here, Richard. Hard-hitting drama, getting to the crux of the human condition and everything. It's really amazing.
Thank you, Tom. Poets laureate Andrew Motion has come under fire for a tepid verse he's penned on the occasion of the national census.
I'm not surprised. I can't imagine anything more boring than the census.
On the contrary, Lolly, the national census is a majestic enterprise, a gesture toward unity, an attempt to frame a whole people in one brief moment of time. In fact, so moving do I find it, and so disappointing is Motion's thin gruel, that I have penned a haiku as an alternative tribute. Who are we? Whither do we come? Whence do we go? Do we own a fridge?
So, does a fridge freezer count twice?
Oh, never mind. Pork scratchings. No, not the pub snack, but the agonising blisters to be found around the face of many a British pig. Yes, indeed, as the foot and mouth epidemic takes hold of the country like an epidemic, we ask, will this terrible blight end meat production in Britain forever? With me in the studio is James Jones from the Vegetarian Society.
Told you so.
I might be pale, but at least I haven't got foot and mouth disease. Oh, God, I've just used up all my energy.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. There were pictures of scorched cows in the papers this week as celebrities in tiny dresses were herded into yet more award ceremonies.
That's right. Showbiz's glitterati posed for the tabloids' paparazzi as they attended the BAFTAs, Brits, Grammys and Larrys.
And with the Oscars and Tonys just around the corner, the way it is has its own clutch of awards for award ceremonies, winners and losers. They're called the Richards.
Or as we're calling them in the office, the Dickies.
No, we're not. No, we're calling them the Richards. Yes.
The Michael Caine Award for Best British Contribution to Award Ceremonies goes to Julie Walters, having been invited to the BAFTAs, Larrys and Oscars.
And then at the Brits, she overdosed on tripe and mushy peas and threw up on Noel from Pop Stars.
The Kelly Brook Draw Attention Away from Your Own Lack of Talent with That Dress Award was won by Caprice.
Again. Russell Crowe scooped the Qantas Bit of a Wasted Journey Award.
And the Full Monty Outstanding Film of the Year Award for a cheap and cheerful, gentle but gritty comedy about the North, previously called the Brassed Off Award, goes to Billy Elliot, a cheap and cheerful, gentle but gritty comedy about the North.
The Indulgent Award Ceremony Award goes to the Brits, as former Best Male Award-winning ex-Take That Robbie Williams was re-awarded with the Best Male Award by his current girlfriend and former award winner ex-Spice Girl Jerry Halliwell.
And that concludes this year's Dickies.
Richards. They're called Richards.
Thousands of items from the Millennium Dome were put up for auction earlier this week.
Mainly unsold tickets and programmes. Time now for a look at what the country's news websites are leading on.
ITN Online goes with teacher numbers desperately low.
The Electronic Telegraph leads with alarming rise in violent crime.
BBC News Online has unstoppable virus threatens to wipe out farming.
And UK Online, the government-backed news site, has we've never had it so good.
Well, it's all go in the soap world. Phil Mitchell has been shot. There's an EastEnders Weakest Link special, and to find new actors, Emmerdale are launching a Pop Stars-like competition.
Auditions to find new actors. How innovative.
Anyway, here once again with our weekly audio guide to the soaps is Stephen Jackie.
Oh, hello. It's me again, and once again it's time to clasp you all to my heaving soapy titbits.
I think I've lost the will to live.
Try looking down the back of the sofa, Dickie. That's where most things turn up.
Get on with it.
Well, get her. Right. Well, this week, of course, over in Ambridge, the Archers, they managed to cleverly blend in a reference to the foot and mouth outbreak, showing that the BBC really have their finger on the pulse.
Oh, Eddie, why don't you go and get the pigs then?
I will, Clary, but I'm worried about
The terrible outbreak of foot and mouth disease that could result in disaster for British farms.
colour of my Wellingtons.
Yes, the agricultural story editor really earning his money there.
And, of course, the big story is Phil Mitchell taking a bullet in the back.
Yes, play the clip.
Phil, oh my God, he's been shot. Get something to stop the...
Terrible outbreak of foot and mouth disease that could result in disaster for British farms. The clever way the soaps try to reflect contemporary life. I'm never tired of it. And that's it from me this week.
Good, go away.
Oh, Richard, you big tease.
Research has shown that teenagers are more likely to take up cigarette smoking if their favourite movie stars are smokers.
Well, I can well believe that, Lolly. I must admit I was a smoker for a brief time myself in my teenage years, purely because Paul Newman did it. Actually, I buy a lot of salad dressing these days for the same reason.
We're joined in the studio by Malcolm Willis of radical anti-smoking group, the Radical Anti-Smoking Group.
Bronchial health is a right, not a privilege.
Less of your slogans, Mr. Willis. Now, smoking in movies encourages young people to light up. What should be done about it?
Any film that features anyone smoking should be burned.
Burned? That's going a bit far, isn't it, Mr. Willis? That would mean destroying some of the greatest films ever made. The Third Man, The Maltese Falcon.
The Flashdance.
Desperate ills require desperate remedies. Smoking kills 120,000 people in this country every year. That's the equivalent of 300 jumbo jets falling out of the sky.
Hang on.
On top of 42,000 other people.
All right, I realise that tobacco smoking is a terrible killer, Mr. Willis, but it is legal, and so people do have the right to smoke if they want to, and presumably to watch other people doing so. Different strokes and all that.
I don't believe in different strokes.
What are you talking about, Willis?
If people are unable to make the right choice for themselves, they should have the choice imposed upon them.
You are a dangerous extremist, Mr. Willis, and this interview is over.
Spoil sport.
Lolly, I understand you've been taking measures to combat your addiction to coffee.
Yes, I've joined Caffeine Holics Unanimous.
Don't you mean anonymous?
No, unanimous. We're all agreed that we love caffeine.
So how's it going?
Great. I haven't touched a cup of coffee for 5 days. I'm wearing a caffeine patch. Can you see?
That's a round tea bag sellotaped to your arm.
Yes, but it works. Controls my withdrawal symptoms with a regulated supply of caffeine. It means I can gain control of my life again.
Well, I'm very glad you're getting clean, Lolly. I'm proud of you.
Thank you, Richard. I'm proud of myself.
Don't mind if I have a coffee, do you, Lolly?
Of course not, Richard. It doesn't bother me. Go ahead. Is it, nice, Richard?
Yeah, it's okay.
Does it taste good? All wet and black and bitter in your mouth?
Lolly, you're leaning in rather close to me. Do you mind?
It looks great, Richard. Oh, look. There's a drip on your chin.
Lolly, get off! Stop licking my face!
The spread of foot and mouth disease has, of course, brought with it a further epidemic, that of experts who know what it is.
We are not immune. Our expert is Dr. Graham Foster, Senior Lecturer in Animal Husbandry at Swindon FE College and a former agricultural editor on The Archers.
Now, Doctor, several of our listeners have rung in, written, emailed, and in one case, thrown a brick through the window with a note attached to it, asking various questions about the disease.
For instance, Margaret Kiln of Ipswich asks whether the disease can be contracted by husbands.
All right. Well, only in exceptional circumstances, Richard. If your husband has cloven hooves, he might be a fawn or possibly Satan. Then he is vulnerable. Otherwise, you know, he'll only become infected if he sits in a bath of pig's blood for comic relief.
This is from Mrs. Tewkesbury of the Happy Invalid Rest Home in Surrogate. She says, our warden uses a hoover almost every day. Are we at risk?
Yeah, right. That lady obviously listens to Longwave.
Sorry to have bothered you with that one. This note, this is the one attached to a brick. It's from our regular anti-monarchist listener, Alan Allen. He writes in crayon, Princess Margaret has been complaining of blisters on the feet for some time now. Off down the incinerator with you, Your Highness, and take your useless herd of a family with you. Doctor?
Well, I'm not qualified to speak on constitutional issues, but yes, I think she should be destroyed.
And finally, Doctor, this by email. Oh,
Oh, look at the udders on that.
Thank you, Dr. Foster.
No, thank you.
I'm Richard.
And I'm Lolly Swain.
And that was The Way It Is.